Okay guys, so we're going to be checking out a couple of products here from FXT. They sent me the little nano camera here, the FXT T80, and then they also sent me the 200 milliwatt little micro video transmitter. This is the FX808T. I believe this has been out for quite a while. It's a much smaller like micro video transmitter that they've been selling for quite a while. I think I've seen it mostly come with a little micro FL connector here, and you can change the antenna. But this one has a little soldered-on whip antenna. I believe they sent this mainly to test this camera, and has a little plug here on this camera that actually fits the video transmitter. You can just plug that right in so that you can get power directly from it. But I think we're going to be talking mainly about this camera. This is the new T80. It's a little micro camera, kind of like the RunCam Nano, but this one has a little plug here that you can plug in an OSD joystick. And actually, I'll plug in a little RunCam Swift joystick here in a second. And you can change your settings. Unlike the RunCam Nano, you can't change the settings. And this has a built-in OSD. It has two things on there: your power on time and has a voltage reading. And there's a little line here for your voltage sensor. Now, the product manager at FXT told me that this can only sense up to 5 volts, and it does do that if you just plug it in here, because if you plug this into the video transmitter, this video transmitter sends out 5 volts, and then it shows up on the screen as 5 volts. But then I wanted to see if this sensor line would read something larger, like a 2S LiPo, and it does read 2S LiPo. So, for example, this video transmitter takes 7 to 20 volts, basically 2 to 4S. I plugged in a 2S LiPo here, and then I just tapped the positive to the positive on the battery lead, and it did read 7.2 volts, which was correct for the battery on the screen. I'll demonstrate that here in a second. So, not sure if the product manager was confused if I was asking about this line here. The input voltage here is only 3.3 to 5.5 volts, I believe. But it looks like this is actually larger, so you could actually put this on, like, say, a 2 or 3S quad, I think, a little micro, and then sense your voltage from this line here, and then get power here directly from your LiPo. So in theory, it could all work. But back to the camera, as I said, you can change all your settings in here, and we'll actually go over that in a second with the OSD. It is PAL and NTSC switchable, and it has a 16:9 and a 4:3 aspect ratio that's also switchable, so it's very configurable. It has wide dynamic range, it's 800 TV lines, all that jazz. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll plug this in, we'll look at it on the monitor, we'll see what the image quality is like, and we'll go through all the settings, and then I'll show you a little bit of sample footage. I'm not sure if I'll have flight footage for this video, but I'll just give you a little sample footage and maybe some flight footage later. Okay, so I got the camera plugged into the video transmitter right here, using that plug that's included, and just got a 2S LiPo powering the video transmitter, so this battery is powering up the video transmitter, and then the video transmitter is setting 5 volts to the camera to power the camera, so that's why you're seeing a 5 volt reading on here. And you can see that the voltage sensor line here isn't touching anything, so you're not going to get a reading off of that. This here is the dongle, or the little pigtail for the OSD joystick, and I have a little RunCam Swift joystick here. It doesn't come with one, but you can use any of these RunCam Swift joysticks. I have a bunch of these, so I'm going to be using that here in a second. But I wanted to show you that if I tap the voltage sensor to the positive here, we'll get a reading on the screen. Okay, so I just have basically I'm holding the voltage sensor line onto the positive of the battery lead here, and we can see here we have a reading of 7.1 volts. I don't think that's adjustable, but I did measure the voltage here, and it was accurate. So you can measure more than 1S or more than 5 volts voltage on the voltage sensor line for this camera, so it's not just limited to 1S only. I'm going to go ahead and I'll plug in the joystick here, and we can look at the settings. Now, when I first went into the settings here, it was not in English, it was in Chinese. So what you got to do is, let me just cover this up so you can see the menu better. You have to go into, basically it's the third from the bottom up. It's called function setup. I had to actually kind of go through this kind of randomly and just kind of test things, but this is the one you want to go into. Select the third one from the bottom and click that, and then here you can change your NTSC or PAL setting. You can go 16:9 or 4:3, and this is where you change your language. and so I just switched it to English and it was fine. So I'm not sure if yours is going to be in Chinese or English, but if it's in Chinese, this is how you would change the language. But let's just go through all of the menus here. So there's FPV setup, which is basically your on-screen display. You can turn off the time or the power if you want, and then you can change the position. I think there's 3 positions. There's like one down here, in the middle, and up in top. So I just leave it there. Unfortunately, you can't fine-tune the position like you can in some other cameras. And then here's the exposure settings. Here you can adjust the exposure. So let me see if I can point this off to one section here. We can check out the exposure. So I'm pointing at something that's kind of dark. Let's see if we can see if we increase the number here. The exposure goes up and the brightness goes up, and then we can obviously decrease it here. So I'll put it back to 7. If you go below 7, it gets obviously a lot darker. So I'm going to leave it on 7. Okay, so then BLC here is backlight compensation. I'm going to point this off to the window here where it's nice and bright. Turn that off. It does make the foreground a little bit darker, so we'll leave that on. And then over here we have the day-night setting. We're going to leave that on color, but you can change that to black and white if you want. And then here we have image setup, and we can change our color gain. Can increase the saturation basically, or decrease it. I'll leave it on default here. You can mirror the image if you want. This is horizontal mirroring, vertical mirroring, horizontal and vertical, and none, so you can flip the image if you want. So for example, all these wires and everything are coming out of the top of the camera. So if you don't like that, if you want to have to come out the bottom or the side or whatever, depending on how you want to mount it, you can flip the image on your camera, which is nice. Now, if we showed you factory function setup before, that's where you can change your NTC PAL or the aspect ratio. So let me just change the aspect ratio here. So looking at the field of view, it's a fairly wide field of view actually. They're saying it's 115 degrees, but yeah, I think it's probably more than that, because I can see the bookcase here off on the right, and then you can almost see the door there. And on like a RunCam Micro Swift with a 2.1mm lens, it's almost as wide, and that advertises 160 degree field of view, so interesting. But if I change the aspect ratio from 16:9 to 4:3, it looks like it's, I mean, obviously it's a little distorted on this monitor, but I mean, it is definitely a narrower field of view horizontally. So if I move it over back to where the bookcase is here, you can't obviously go quite as far to the left. You can't quite see as much. So I'm thinking that this is actually a 16:9 sensor, and they're doing some sort of voodoo magic in the software to crop the image and then deal with the distortion, because there's a little bit of distortion on the 4:3. So I'm not sure if I like the 4:3 as much as the 16:9. And looks like the vertical field of view is about the same, but look at how the light is kind of stretched out there. If I go back to 16:9, see how that looks a little bit, it's more of a circular shape. That's the way it's supposed to look like. But when you go to 4:3, it looks like it's stretching the image out. You can see there. Yeah, that's kind of strange looking, so I'm not sure if I like the 4:3 so much. I think I like the 16:9 better, and it's very wide horizontally and vertically, so it's pretty nice overall. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this outside, and then we'll get a little bit of outside footage in the daylight. Obviously, you can see what it looks like indoors. Let me just give you a little bit of a closer look at it. The image is quite nice, 800 TV lines, you got a 2.1mm lens, it's an M8 lens. Everything is nice and sharp and in focus. FXT is known for making pretty good products, so I'm not surprised at the image quality here. It looks really nice overall. Okay, so here's just a little bit of footage outside my house, pointing it at the sun. It's a bright day, no clouds, middle of the day, and it seems to handle exposure changes fairly well, although the image looks a little bit washed out when you're looking at the ground, so I guess the sky gets kind of blown out. Of course, I'm just using stock settings here, so this might be adjustable, of course. Not 100% sure, but the algorithm for handling the exposure changes and how rapidly it changes the image and adjusts the images seems to be okay, moderately fast, but I think the RunCam Nano is a little bit faster than this. Just my impression from flying both cameras. So I may do a side by side in the future, but if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments. Okay, so as promised, this is a little bit of flight footage. I'm just recording this on my Fat Shark goggles, and of course in the Fat Shark goggles really mangles up the image, so you can tell that the previous recording was done on an eSheen Pro DVR, and that has a much higher resolution and bitrate, so that image from before looks much better than this image here on the Fat Shark goggles. So I need to do something about these camera recordings and such, because I guess I'm getting complaints that things that are recorded on Fat Shark DVRs don't look as good, but it's only because I'm recording other things on other DVRs that happen to look better, and I'm just now realizing that this is actually becoming a problem. So yeah, just know that the image quality here is not less because of the camera, it's because of the DVR. The previous recording that you saw outside my house was on an eSheen Pro DVR, and that was recording at a higher bitrate than the Fat Shark DVR. So, and obviously this is it's got more transmission glitches because of the FPV transmission, and you got some video breakup. So, gotta account for that. But that's mainly why you see a visual difference here in the image quality between this recording and the previous recording. Other than that, it's the same camera, same settings, nothing has changed, just the DVR. So keep that in mind. So understanding the limitations of the DVR recording, what do you guys think of this image? As I mentioned before, it doesn't look washed out, and you can see pretty much anything at the sun, looking at the sun, is really blown out. This could be adjusted, of course, with settings, but of course I'm just going to fly with the stock settings here. The ground doesn't turn dark like it usually does on a lot of CMOS cameras, so that's always good. And all the everything I needed to see in terms of details and such near the ground was fine. So I'd rather have the camera blow out the sky than the ground, which is more important to me, because I'd rather see what's on the ground so I don't crash into stuff. That's actually more important. But you can see how it handles light changes going under and around the trees here. So leave your comments below as your opinion on this camera. You can go check the link out, check out the price. I'm not exactly sure how much it is, but I think it's about the same price as the RunCam Nano. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.